Online learning relies heavily on recorded lecture videos, with large repositories of instructional content now available across many educational platforms. At the same time, several studies have shown that immersive learning environments, such as virtual reality, can improve engagement and learning compared with traditional video lectures. Recent advances in artificial intelligence, particularly large language models, also enable systems that support interactive question answering during learning. In this work, we describe the steps followed to convert recorded lecture videos into interactive, immersive learning environments. The method consists of two phases. The first phase is content extraction and preparation. We begin with the source lecture video and transcript, divide the lecture into chronological content blocks, and define expert-reviewed breakpoints that determine when interaction can occur. We then recreate the instructor as a pedagogical agent by modeling the lecturer's appearance, cloning the voice from the full lecture audio, and extracting motion from the source video. In parallel, we prepare the lecture script as the grounding source for the language model and replicate the instructional setting in Unity. The second phase is runtime interaction. During the immersive lesson, the system operates through three states: lecture state, idle state, and answering state. At predefined breakpoints, the lesson pauses and the learner can ask a spoken question. The system transcribes the question, retrieves the relevant lecture context, generates a grounded response, and delivers that response through the pedagogical agent. To support response delivery, an animation controller synchronizes gesture selection and body motion with the generated speech. We evaluated the system in a between-group study with 69 participants across video.
We're going to talk about a fundamental cellular process called DNA replication.
Desktop.
We're going to talk about a fundamental cellular process called DNA replication.
And immersive conditions.
We're going to talk about a fundamental cellular process called DNA replication.
We now present a recorded example of the immersive question-answering experience during runtime interaction.
In their point that you can compare the two right-hand sides of the original parent trend on the left-hand side and notice that they're identical to one another. This process of going from one piece of DNA on the left-hand side to two genetically identical pieces of DNA on the right-hand side is called DNA replication, and that's what I want to talk to you about in more detail next. Let me pause for a moment. Do you have any questions so far?
How does A know to go with T and not with C?
I'm glad you asked. A and T, C and G always interact in those pairs. In other words, the system is set up so that A is only complementary to T and C is only complementary to G, so when new bases are added during replication, the machinery simply matches each base to its specific partner, using the strict pairing rule as a guide.
What is DNA polymerase?
Thanks for bringing DNA polymerase in a few minutes, when we get to the part of the lecture where I introduce the next protein here called DNA polymerase 3. At that point, I'll show you how it acts as the workhorse enzyme that extends the new DNA strand during replication.
The results show that the interactive conditions increased engagement relative to passive video, and the immersive condition also increased intrinsic interest and learning gains. At the same time, the interactive conditions increased mental effort and perceived pressure, highlighting an important trade-off between interactivity, learning benefits, and usability. Overall, the results demonstrate the potential to transform passive lecture media into interactive, immersive learning experiences while preserving the structure of the original lecture. For further methodological and experimental details, please refer to the full paper. Thank you for watching the video.